It is the Blue Room. It is your weekly show. And we are building up. Mick Greenall's laughing already, which bodes well. Mick, you're just very excited to talk about Everton and Conor Cody and the best defence in the league.
I was just trying to mute myself before. I don't know if you heard it again. The meeting's being recorded. I know it scares the life out of you and it scares the life out of me every time. I didn't get there in time.
I didn't hear it that time. Did you hear it, Les?
I did, but I'm kind of used to it now. Nothing scares me.
There we go. I think people by now realise, with these remote recordings we do, that there's going to be the odd voice every now and then.
Yeah. My thing with Zoom is I can never find the record button. Even though it never moves, I can never find it.
Yeah, it's always on the more, isn't it? I think. Oh no, it's not on mine. It's not. It's just there at the bottom.
Yeah, I've got it's a big record button there, but yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, it's just unnecessarily loud though. So.
Yeah.
Other than that, all right.
Yeah, we need to get different voices. Get Conor Cody's voice on there, just saying your meeting is being recorded. That'd really get you invigorated to start the show. We'll speak about that a little bit later on, of course. We've also got we'll do a bit of a reflection on Southampton and that determined win. We'll also talk about Manchester United on Sunday. Big game in what is probably the worst kickoff time ever in Premier League history, which I'm sure we can all agree on as well. But just sort of wanted to pivot to something a little bit different, lads, because it's I was thinking about last night watching the goal show, and we're just sort of speaking about it a little bit there. But it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on what's going on with Erling Haaland and Manchester City at the moment, because he scored 3 hat-tricks in a row at home in the Premier League. Obviously, he got another 2 last night in the 45 minutes of football he was on in the Champions League. He's on 19 goals already this season in all competitions. Les, what are we seeing, Age? Do you feel like this is sustainable? Should we be worried about Dixie Dean and that 60-goal record, or is this eventually going to tail off? Because it sort of feels like it. There's watching Manchester City and watching the way they create chances and watching the way this lad finishes. It does feel like he's going to go berserk for the entire campaign.
Yeah, it does. I think injuries permitting, there's no reason why he can't actually break that record, which is quite terrifying, really, because it stood for that long and it's one that we thought it would never get beaten. But yeah, he's a machine, isn't he? He's making every league look like the Farmers League. So people were saying, in Germany, oh yeah, that's fine. You're playing, teams that aren't at the standard of the Premier League, which is it's a massively overrated league anyway. But he has come in and it's a bit of a perfect storm because City create a lot of chances. He can score a lot of goals. It's like there's nothing really to stop him now. I reckon at Dortmund, they were no Man City, so he probably wasn't getting the amount of chances he's going to get now. But, I don't know if Mick's got his sort of conversion ratio, but it must be pretty high to be on that many goals already.
It must be like 100%. It can't be far off. But I admit, Mick, when this signing happened, as much as I thought he'd eventually do well and score goals, I did sort of feel like this is going to take some time for him to adapt to City and City to adapt to him. But maybe it is just the case of what Les has said. The team creates lots of chances, signs really good finisher, and scores lots of goals. I mean, maybe it's just as simple and straightforward as that.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same as you. I thought it would be maybe a bit of a slow start to the point I didn't even put him in my fancy team at the start of the season, which I regretted straight away because, it doesn't matter what you do fancy-wise. If you've not got Haaland in, then you're not winning any games. But I think he's been ridiculous. I don't think he'd get 60 goals. I just think even to get 60 goals is just an obscene amount, even for him. I do think there's a real possibility that he could get close to 40, if not over 40. But even then, 60 is still some way off that. And there was a little clip I saw on Twitter this morning. I don't know if you've seen it. I think BT put it out, and it was obviously from the Champions League last night. And I think the referee had dropped his spray, and he's obviously noticed it. Bear in mind, he's nowhere near it. City are in attacking, and it goes out wide to Grealish or something. He decides to just go for a stroll in the middle of the pitch, pick up the spray, lob it to the referee, and then runs back into the box for the chance, and the ball comes in. And it's just like, it is literally like watching, the only way I can describe it, it's like watching I don't know, like say year 7's playing against like a sixth former who's like signed up for an academy already, and he's just absolutely obviously better than everyone else, and he knows it. He is ridiculous. I'm very grateful that we don't play Man City until Boxing Day.
I think that just going on that, what you said then, that clip of him picking up the spray, it put me in mind of that volley Rooney scored against Newcastle, where he's arguing with the ref, walking up, and the attack's going on. He's still arguing with the ref, and he looks up, he sees the cross is about to come in, it gets crossed, and just volleys it in and runs off. It's like, I think we're definitely talking a generational talent on that level. It's looking that way now.
Yeah, he's a bit different to Rooney though, isn't he? He's not got like, he's just like so steely and focused and cold, isn't he? Whereas Rooney had that, like I said, that moment the referee came as a pure aggression, whereas this lad's just like, right, see ball, hit ball, but it's all just very, mechanical. And I'm trying to avoid using the word robots. I know so many people have used that about him since he came to the Premier League, but it is sort of like that, isn't it? It's just...
he's definitely a T1000. Defo.
Yeah, it is extraordinary. But, lads, he's not come up against the best defence in the league yet, has he? Which we should probably say. I'm sure Connor and the lads will be able to shut him down if when that day eventually comes. But yeah, let's get into it then. Like I said, we'll speak a bit about Southampton, then a bit about Manchester United at the weekend. On Saturday, Les, I was sort of content with the way he played in the first half. Thought it was okay, and sort of before process at half time was, if Anthony Gordon comes on and plays well, then we'll probably take this game away from Southampton a little bit. Didn't quite work out like that, obviously, in the end. And we can see the very Everton goal, and you think this is going to be a very Everton football match. But this team's probably got a little bit more about it, hasn't it? Maybe than what we've seen in recent years. And certainly it's not the best Everton side we've seen in the Premier League era. But it's got a lot more spirit and a lot more heart than a lot of 11s we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, definitely. I think looking at that first half, going into half time, it was like we needed to score there, because it doesn't matter what Everton team is playing in what era. It's like they're going to concede a goal. If they play a half of football like that without scoring, they're definitely going to concede somewhere in the second half. Because I think we were that dominant for the first half. Southampton didn't really get a sniff. But yeah, as you say, to come back from that setback, and I mean it was a poor goal to concede. Just a bit too much standing off from the midfield and the defence, which we are quite susceptible to, because we've seen Jordan Pickford made quite a few good saves. So I think the whole defence in general is doing its job well, and the midfield sitting in front of it is doing its job well as well. It seems to be a decent cohesive unit, as you've seen in that first half. Though it's getting up the pitch and creating the chances that's been a bit of a problem. But we're doing things to overcome that. We scored a couple of good goals there. I think Cody's goal was excellent. The cross, the movement from the free kick itself, the header across, the finish, it was a really good goal. So we're doing things to overcome the sort of lack of chances that we're maybe creating from open play. But yeah, it was just good to see them come back. And I think had Onana scored that header, it would have completely killed Southampton off, and it wouldn't have been a nervy finish at all. But at 2-1, there's always that nagging feeling that something could go wrong. But with the defence, I do feel pretty confident at the minute. It's a good partnership. And if you look at the way we've changed that centre-back pairing and the midfield three from what we finished with last season, you're dealing with a completely different Everton team here. And, don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but it's going all right so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to speak about the defence in a bit more detail, but just on the midfield, Mick, I think those three were sort of the driving force behind us being the much better side in the first half. I think those three in there worked really well. I think Garner sitting in front of the back four, where he was doing his thing, and Arnold was just being a bit of a nuisance from set pieces, and as Les mentioned. And I think you sort of saw both sides to that midfield throughout the game, because the first half it was sort of like, this is what this could be when these lads are all functioning and playing well. And then I think in the second half, they looked more like three players who had not played together all that much. This was still the second time only these three have started together in the midfield. And, Garner's pass for the goal and how sort of loose it was, and Arnold not really looking. I mean, there was still signs there that although this is potentially going to be good and we can kick on and develop from there, that we are still going to have to be patient with these three players, as much as they look as though they're going to be pretty, beneficial to each other as playing in a midfield three.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the only way I could describe it is that I think the midfielders, the three in midfield, they almost seem to have very specific roles to the point that when it's going well, like it was in the first half, it does look really, really complete in terms of, it's probably the best on paper anyway, best Everton midfield that we've had since Martinez's first season. Whereas in the second half, when it's maybe not as, I don't know, maybe I'm trying to think of why it was. I think a big part of the second half was I think fatigue. I think Iwobi, I was surprised he lasted pretty much the whole game. I don't think he was substituted in the end, was he?
No,
But
and then Ghana played international duty as well, didn't they? No,
yeah,
Belgium.
I thought they all looked a bit shattered in the second half. But it can be the good and bad thing to the point where in the second half, it almost looked like they do have very specific roles and they are just almost doing their own thing. And I thought you kind of saw that with the goal we conceded. And I think you saw that in the way in which Iwobi, I thought, tailed off in the second half. I thought he was very quiet after a really impressive first half. But in terms of just the game itself, I think for 60 minutes, it was probably our best performance of the season. I think. I know we didn't get any. We couldn't get in front in the first half, but in terms of, there was evidence there to prove that we can go away to what has been a very difficult ground for us. I think outside of the top six, I think St Mary's away has probably been one of our, since they've been promoted in 2012, I think was probably one of our worst away trips. We just got a horrendous record there. But we were really good. I thought, we showed really good intensity. We were maintaining attack quite well. And I think Che Adams had one sort of half chance in the first half. Apart from that, they had nothing until the goal. And I think it was very similar last year when we played there. And then the second half, it was similar in a way that, in fact, I thought the game itself was quite similar. The second half, they kind of took it away from us, but we were a bit clinical in the second half this time around, and they weren't. And thankfully, it was we got the win.
Yeah, and as we said at the start, that just conceding one there, and City and others conceding loads this weekend means that we have got the best defensive record in the league, Mick. And I'm very glad you're on today, because I've seen a lot of chat about this, and the top line is Everton. You can't argue with those numbers at the moment. We have got the best defensive record in the league, and we have played a game more than a lot of teams as well. Let's not forget, because of the postponement. So that's makes it probably even more impressive. How much are you reading into that at this point, mate? Because obviously we've spoken a lot on these shows about teams have hit the post against us quite a lot. We've conceded a lot of chances. Jordan Pickford's been playing very well. Do you sort of look at it as a bit of a, do the numbers in terms of goals conceded speak for themselves? Is there something a little bit more underlying there in regards to XG, or is it probably somewhere a little bit in the middle?
I think every time I've seen Everton have got the best defence in the league for the last couple of days, I can't help but roll my eyes. I think it's more so maybe Everton have got the best performing goalkeeper in the league at the moment, in Asmir Begovic, and then Jordan Pickford as well. But I think it's tough, because I don't want to be too critical, but I'd much rather give constructive criticism when Everton are winning and 7 games unbeaten, than compared to last season, when not only are the underlying metrics not great, but also everyone's calling for the manager to be sacked. I think at the moment Everton have just got a goalkeeper who's performing, especially in comparison to maybe previous years, out of his skin. I think it's probably the best version of Jordan Pickford we've seen since he signed. And I think slowly but surely those naive, stupid comments about, if Pickford played like he did for England, for Everton, he'd be amazing. Whereas it's pretty much, he's just been a consistent performer for a good 12 months now. And then you've got 2 centre backs who are very good at, without trying to put it too simplistically, are very good at defending the 6-yard box, very good at defending the goal, if you get me. But I do think it's at a rate at the moment where it's probably unsustainable for Everton to continue the full season to be in the best defence. Well, roll my eyes there. The best defence in the league. I think we are. I think we've conceded something. I think we're in the bottom 3 for a lot of metrics defensively especially for shots and shots on target. We're 18th for XG against, which is never great. And even I think people can be very it's very easy to look away from metrics like that when it doesn't tell you what it wants to tell you, if you get me. And I've been guilty of that in the past, but it's very obvious because it's not just XG or shot, it's also in terms of the amount of times, we're letting teams get into dangerous opportunities, it's getting into different areas of the pitch. I think it is plausible to think that maybe, and I think we saw that very, very clearly against Southampton, that part of it is down to approach. I think as soon as we went ahead, it was a very distinct change, if you get me. We were not, whilst we were still a threat. You mentioned Onana had a chance, and I think Gray would have been offside, but he had a very good chance to score from McNeil's pass. But it was very much playing on the counter now, which was it's understandable away from home. But I don't think we're great at sitting back and trying to defend the lead, but also preventing teams from having chances at the same time. I do think we got a bit lucky on Saturday at times, and I think at the moment it's more so a case of where we're getting a bit of the rub of the green defensively, rather than us being the best defence in the league, if you get me. But that's not to say that it can't change. The best way to make consistent, the best way to be better from a metrics point of view is to get results, because results ultimately produces confidence, and confidence produces good, better performances in the future. But yeah, I'd still probably stay clear from us being the best defence in the league.
We do. You're on mute, Matt.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say I'm all in on it. I'm gonna keep saying it. Up to this weekend anyway.
I'm more than happy with it, and that's that's where you've got to build your team from, isn't it? You've got to build it from a solid defensive base. But I do agree that we do have to exercise a little bit of caution, purely because I think a word Mick brought up there, which is very, very key, is sustainability. Now, last season we got off to a flying start. We were playing a lot of counter-attacking football, and that just wasn't sustainable in the end, because the second we stopped playing that counter-attacking football well, we weren't good on the ball, we weren't good in possession, we couldn't do anything else, and the wheels fell off really quickly. So I think Mick's right, we can't keep, letting teams in, letting teams have these good chances, because, we're with the width of the bar away from, who with the bar was it? Sorry, the post, who with the post? Yeah, it's gone. What game was it?
Oh, Ben Rama against West Ham.
Yeah, West Ham, wasn't it? Sorry, yeah. With the width of the post away from going behind, that could have easily hit another part of the post and flown in. So we've got to be cautious, but, it is nice to be in that position that we are. We have, particularly from where we were last season, that we now have got a defence we can look at and think, yeah, these lads know what they're doing. As Mick said, they defend the goal very well. There was a little sequence, wasn't there, in the second half against Southampton, where there was bodies flying everywhere, but not in a Watford at home kind of bodies running into everyone last season, flying everywhere. This was very much in a bodies on the line defensive display, where everyone's getting in the way, and then Pickford makes that great save when he's basically on his knees already. So we do need to temper ourselves a little bit. Don't get carried away, because the wheels can fall off pretty quickly. But it's a nice position to be in after what we went through last season.
I think for me, it would be a shock if we were really high up from a good perspective on XG against, because as I've said a lot this week, this is a new team, isn't it? And particularly an entirely new defence and a new midfield. And there's going to be moments where they're not on the same wavelength, where, players like Cody and Coleman playing together on the right side of the defence, right centre-back, right-back, first time at the weekend. There's little shifts that have been there all campaign, be it due to injuries or be it due to new players coming in. But at least we're sort of finding a way to sort of get through that. And I think as much as, we can look at the numbers, and I think we can all sit here and say that maybe the rub of the green has gone for us at times this season. There isn't really a metric, Les, for some of the intangible things that maybe someone like Conor Cody in particular and James Tarkowski has brought in. And Cody in particular, I thought was excellent at the weekend in pretty much everything he did. I think in particular in those last 20 minutes where, all right, Southampton did get a couple of chances, but I think he sort of I think that sort of style of football in particular, as Mick said, where you are sitting back, it's like, right, we've got 20 minutes to get through this now. It's also almost like a little mini challenge within the game. And, it feels like they're the sort of passages of play and situations that he really relishes. And I think he just came into his own in particular in those last 20 minutes.
Yeah, he definitely did. They're looking like a good partnership there so far. I know we had that season a few years ago where we bought everyone's captain and it didn't really work out, but it feels like now in the team we have got leaders, not necessarily captains, but we've got leaders. Even down to Onana, he looks like he's not averse to telling people what they need to do. And yeah, there's a lot of characters, and that makes a big difference. But they're the right characters, and they love it as well. You can see the two of them. They love the battle, don't they? They love the scrap, and that is one of those intangibles that if you've got two players who, when it comes to the last 20 minutes, and you've got to grind out a result, and they're proper up for that. That is an intangible thing that you can't put a metric on. It's not going to work all the time, as Mick said. You can't do that all season because you will come unstuck at times. But yeah, it is just good to see that there's players in there that are really making a difference with the character and their ability, considering what we've been used to for the last few years.
Yeah, and I think the two centre backs in particular, there seems to be like a willingness to bail each other out, or I think at the weekend, funnily enough, it was Tarkowski who had to sort of bail himself out, wasn't he? Because that pass he played was absolutely horrific pass across the pitch, and then we have the 3 blocks from it, and then we go up the other end and score. Maybe that was his plan all along, get 3 blocks in, get everybody going, and then we'll go off and score from it. But Mick, I think after we signed Cody, you were on the show and you were sort of maybe a little bit sceptical about the move. Have you been surprised by how effective he's been since he come in particular as part of a back four?
I've been really impressed, to be honest. I don't think you can put it any other way. He's been really good, and I think it's so obvious as to why he is, despite never playing, part of the England squad. I think he's been brilliant, and I think he was brilliant for Nathan Patterson as well. Unfortunately, that's obviously been cut a bit short, but yeah, I don't think you can complain, and I think. Yeah, I'm happy, and I think we all saw 4.5 million was mentioned yesterday. I don't think you can sniff at that, can you really?
No, I think that's what we paid for Sylvain Distin 10 years ago. He was a little bit older, so it feels like one they will eventually get over the line. And just finally, lads, at the other end of the pitch, Dwight McNeil, big moment for him, obviously. Mick, I don't think he had the best game maybe before he did score, but he was always shown for it again. He's always, I think he works hard, but I think he doesn't stop running, but he doesn't really run anywhere fast. It's a bit of a strange one, but he's always moving. He's always shown for the ball. He's always trying things, and I think moving him over to the left hand side really helped him at the start of that second half, and that's got to give him confidence now, hasn't it? Because he would have seen, Cody come in and have his moments, Mopé come in and have his moments, Onana's been a fan's favourite straight away. Same with Tarkowski, and it feels like everyone's kind of taken to the new signings, or they've made an impact already, and he kind of hasn't up until Saturday, but that's got to be a springboard for him now, surely.
Yeah, I was made up when he scored. I think I understand it, but I do think people have been very quick to maybe jump on his back. I kind of understandably, I suppose that's what happens when someone signs and people aren't, enamoured with it straight away. And I think the vast majority probably were unsure when the rumours came out initially. But yeah, to be honest, I don't think he's been as bad as maybe as people say. I do think it is noticeable how slow maybe he is. And I think maybe going forwards as an option, maybe not obviously first choice. I think maybe he'd actually suit playing as a number 10, maybe where you're not as reliant on dragging the team out wide and taking on fullbacks. Where I do think from a technical side, I think maybe a bit similar to Iwobi in that you when he first signed, and then you can see that the technical side and the dribbling ability is there, but there was just something that and that was obvious that he's not a natural winger, if you get me. I don't know where McNeil played academy-wise. I know he was at United before he went to Burnley. But I was made up when he scored on Saturday, and I don't know if you saw his Instagram post as well. He's obviously, and I don't think he was directed at his time at Everton. I do think he had a poor or struggling year at Burnley last year. I don't think he scored at all, so I was very happy for him. And hopefully, like you said, it's a bit of a turning point and he can kick on. And to be honest, I wouldn't be against him starting on Sunday, to be honest.
Yeah. Is he going to be the new Billy Letton, Les? Get him playing number 10.
Get
that left foot behind the centre forward. That's what we need.
If he can hit a shot like that, yeah. I think Mick's right. It's sort of, he wasn't, and yourself, what you said just then, he wasn't a signing that I don't think any of us really felt we needed, and he wasn't the most exciting prospect we could have got. So I think looking at Burnley, you look at Cornet, he was probably a bit more like for like with Richarlison, because he was fast, aggressive, can hit a shot. He just looked a more similar player if we were going to replace Richarlison. So to sort of bring in McNeil, who, as you say, he's not the fastest lad in the world, but technically he's pretty good. I think it was one of them where people looked at it and it was like, well, is this really what we want? We pay 15 million. Are we in a position to do that? And it was all quite underwhelming. So he was always going to have to win us over to a degree, I suppose, which isn't fair, but it's just one of those things that happens. It happens at every club, doesn't it? And I think, if he can slowly come into his own. I think that's all he can do, really, isn't it? He's not. I don't think he's going to be one of those players who will, always hit the headlines and become a fan's favourite necessarily. But he's brought in to do a job, and he did a decent enough job at the weekend. And as Mick said, I think I'll probably put him back in against United.
He's a quite timid character, doesn't he?
The
little glimpses we've seen, I think when he was at Burnley, I thought he was a lot quicker than he was, but he seemed like someone who was quite expressive and confident on the ball. But off the pitch, it doesn't really feel like he's like that at all. Every interview you see with him, whenever you read stuff he's spoken about, he doesn't really seem the brash or flash type at all, and that could be tricky for him coming to a club like Everton, I suppose.
Yeah. He needs to build his confidence, I suppose, doesn't he? Because if you are that type of character and you don't hit the ground running straight away, and you've not got that sort of inner confidence to just express yourself, like you say, it makes it a lot harder, doesn't it? You kind of think if Richarlison goes to Spurs and he doesn't get off to a great start, it wouldn't bother him because he's so confident in his own ability. You're like, I'll get there, be fine.
But I think he's gone to Spurs, and I don't think he's necessarily had a great start in terms of performances, but they've taken to him straight away because of his personality, haven't they?
Yeah,
whereas McNeil's never going to have that, is he? Which is probably makes things a little bit more difficult for him.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, good win. Great scenes at the end as well in regards to the celebrations and all that, and sort of gives us I don't know. I wouldn't say it takes the pressure off us, Mick, going into these next run of games, but we've got United at home and Spurs away over the next 2 weekends. Both sides have shown promise at times this season, but certainly the last weekend both had chasing the results against near rivals. Obviously, United got absolutely levered by Manchester City. Unfortunately, we don't have Haaland or Phil Foden line up for the Blues the weekend, but this does feel like a good opportunity for us going into this game. And you look at their defence and the way in which they were pulled apart of the weekend and the injuries they've got there, it does feel like they've got a little bit of a soft centre that we could exploit.
I'd quietly confident going into Sunday. I don't think I know they went on United went on a little bit of a run just before I think they more or less just stopped playing football for a month. But I wasn't really, overly impressed with them. I know there was a reaction after the Brentford game, but I think that was, more than likely, it was bound to happen after you get beat 4-0 when you're Manchester United. I think they were always going to go on a run, and there was going to be some sort of reaction. But I still don't think they played brilliantly in any way. I think they've been a bit fortunate a few times, especially in Europe as well. So, and obviously with them playing Europe tonight, I think that the early kick-off and they've more or less got full strength out. I think.
Have they named the strong team, have they? I've not seen that.
Yeah. I think it's pretty much. I think it might be Rashford and Martial are playing, and the rest of it is pretty much full strength. Eriksen, Fernandes, Casemiro, Ronaldo, the back five, they're all the same. So, I mean, and I think the kickoff kind of does help us a little bit because it was meant to be the early kickoff on the Saturday, which I absolutely hate, especially at Goodison. I've got a running maybe it's just me who notices it, but like I feel like the home side never wins on an early kickoff on a Saturday. They just never, unless it's Man City.
Yeah.
Home teams have just got a dreadful record, because I think it's just, I think the big part is the atmosphere. Like, vast majority of the time, no one's up for the early kickoff, and I think you always feel that when you're in the ground. So I know it's a late kickoff on a Sunday, but I think I'd much rather United under the lights, if you get me, than the early kickoff, even though it is Sunday. But yeah, and I think it's a big chance for us, because Spurs and Newcastle's next, isn't it, after United, and
both away.
I see them, and they're two really difficult fixtures. I know Newcastle probably haven't won as many. I think they're only maybe a point ahead of us, or 2 points, but I think they've been quite good, quite impressive this season. And I think Spurs, I think Spurs are the type of team that, I know they've not been playing brilliantly as well this season, but Kane and Son, they seem to have a field day. I think it was 5-0 in March or April, weren't it? So I don't expect us to get much out of that, but I didn't expect us to get anything out of Southampton as well. But I think if we could somehow find ourselves winning 3 on the bounce, I think it kind of gives Spurs and Newcastle a little bit of a free hit, really. And then going into the last couple of fixtures after them are quite not easy, but it gives us a little bit of confidence going into them anyway.
Yeah, I agree with Mick there, Legend. As much as Sunday night is ridiculous, and there should never be football at that time. Feels like one of them that when people get out to the booze, or when they get in the ground, you'll sort of forget it, won't you? And the atmosphere will be like what it would be if it was a 5:30, or it was like a midweek against your Manchester United, and people should be up for it as a result.
Yeah, I think that's what it'll be. Like, as you said, the 12:30 kickoff's awful. 2:00 Sunday afternoon is the worst one for me. That's a terrible time for a game. So yeah, I think I'm not really enamoured by the 7:00 because it's a bit of a pain. But yeah, going to Goodison under the lights, it's much better, isn't it, than a Sunday afternoon or an early Saturday afternoon. It's a big chance for us, this, isn't it? One will inevitably blow, but it is a big chance for us, because it's like the Southampton win, the West Ham win. So that's a home win, it's an away win. That's 2 things off our back straight away. Home clean sheet against West Ham, that's another thing off our back. I think when these things start to get chalked off early on, it takes a bit of pressure off the team, because West Ham, we won 1-0. It could have been like we won 2-1, still haven't kept a clean sheet, although we did against Liverpool. Anyway, you know what I mean? It's like these things that like chalked off quite early this season. We've got the clean sheet, the away win, the home win. So going into this game, looking at the stats, and we've won 2 out of the last 5, lost 2 and drawn 1. Obviously, we won with that Anthony Gordon goal last year. It does feel like a fixture we generally do all right in. Although, looking back at the results, we've lost quite a few in the last 10. But we've also won a few. It's dead hard to say, isn't it? I'm really on the fence with this one here.
Yeah, we lost 3-1, didn't we, in lockdown, after going 1-0 up. I think Fernandes scored. And then we drew 1-1, didn't we, under Ancelotti, when the goal was disallowed right at the end.
Yes.
Or offside. And that's when Ancelotti was famously sent off at the end, wasn't he?
Yeah. And then there was the 4-0 win.
Yeah.
Before that. So there's we've got decent enough form in this game, and as you say, United could be picked apart. You just don't know if they're going to be a bit stung after what happened against City. And as you said, we're not City. So
it does feel as well, I'll come back to you on this, Les, that not only have they got a soft centre in defence with potentially Varane and maybe less so Maguire being out injured for this one, but it feels like the exact sort of game that you could really do with Dominic Calvert-Lewin being on the bench at least, doesn't it? Because it's been well documented that the little lad they've got at the back has had a bit of a hit and miss time. If you can get the ball wide to someone like McNeil, and then you can crash the box with Calvert-Lewin and Onana like he did at the weekend, then that really feels like a way we can get at them. Because I think if Lindelof plays even alongside Martinez, he's not the most combative in the area either. That feels like an area we could really bully them. And under the lights, Goodison Park, you centre forward. It's we've had it before, haven't we? It feels like it would be a bit of a throwback to games gone by as well.
Yeah, it would be good to have him back, but I think we're still in a position where we don't need to rush him so much, because we've seen what happens in the past when we do that. I just think on that, if we do need that presence up front, I think it'd probably be worth pushing Onana up in the attack, wouldn't it? Instead of having him sitting back, make sure he pushes up with the attack, and then he's that sort of aerial presence in there if we need it. So yeah, I mean, we have got options and we can get at them, but it would be nice to go into it with pretty much a fully fit squad, obviously bar Patterson, but yeah, to have Calvert-Lewin back would be great, but I don't think we can bank on it, can we?
No. I mean, is that a bit of a concern for you now, Mick? You know, I think that the answers from Lampard are getting vaguer and vaguer, aren't they, on Calvert-Lewin? And, you know, the training pictures always come out and you're always looking to see if he's involved and he's not. You know, there's even a video that they put out today, didn't they, with the players talking about the favourite box sets and everyone's in training gear and he's just this normal at-home, comfy clobber by the looks of it. It's getting a little bit concerning, isn't it? It just feels like it's going on and on and on now.
Yeah, I think first of all, I'd just like to say what Les just mentioned then. I've been thinking about pretty much all week Onana versus Martinez. I can't wait for that. I think he's probably about double his size. Honestly, the amount of balls that are going to get pinged to Onana on Sunday, can't wait.
I think a foot different. What is he, 5'6", Martinez, or 5'9",
5'7",
maybe?
something like that. 5'9", I think it is, yeah.
Yeah.
And Onana's like 6'6", isn't he?
3/4 of a foot difference in height.
That's massive.
That's like me playing centre back. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this Calvert-Lewin situation is it's terrible, really. Like, there's no other way to describe it. You know, he came off having the best season of his career to date. I think even then, the back end of that season, I think he'd started to pick up quite a few little niggles more than anything. And then I think he had a broken toe, was it, at the start of last season? And I didn't realise this. I think I've listened to a few podcasts or read a few things over the last couple of weeks, and there's quite a few players in the past who have, you know, their injury or their careers have been ended by injury eventually, and they've kind of they pointed back to one specific injury that's not really related to the injury that ended their career, but it's like if it wasn't for that was kind of the catalyst, and it was they ignored it, or it was the catalyst for other stuff then. And I don't want that to be the case with Dom, because like I said, he was just coming off the back of his best season. You know, he was quite literally an animal compared to other defences, and I do think he'd be perfect on Sunday. And I think it's just a bit depressing that the previous manager, I think, just kind of sacrificed him for his own career, really. And there were rumours, I don't know how true it was, that initially Calvert-Lewin needed surgery when whatever, I think it was quad initially, right?
Yeah.
After the toe injury, wasn't it?
Yeah. And
the club Benitez had kind of said that, you know, we need you back so you can wait till the end of the season. And I don't think, to be honest, being realistic, and I hope I'm wrong, I don't think we'll ever see Calvert-Lewin back being the Calvert-Lewin that was in Ancelotti's full season, which is really unfortunate, because I think he's such a likeable character, and it was a great story as well, because he came in and he was, let's be honest, if it weren't for the recruitments after Lukaku, he never would have been in that situation anyway. He probably would have been like quite a few of those, you know, academy signings around that period in which that, you know, they were brought in, high rated, never really given the opportunity. He was forced to play in his development, his testament, really, and that sometimes players just need to, even if they're not exactly performing, they just need games, and then it will come eventually. And for it to, not to end the way it has, but for it to kind of peter out the way it has, and now it's, you know, from a realistic point of view, that you probably likely won't see him at that level again. It's just a bit depressing.
I think for me, that accumulation of injuries, so as you say, like little niggly injuries, picking them up all the time, that is the sort of thing that can just quickly wipe out the middle part of a player's career, which is kind of what it's doing to him now. And you kind of find with some of these players, they will come back towards the end of the career and they'll be effective. They'll never be the same, but they'll have a relatively decent end to the career, because the injuries aren't enough to actually finish them off. It's just really wiped out the middle part of the career, the best years probably. So it would be a shame if that was to happen now, but it is the accumulation of seemingly different little injuries and then recurrences of old injuries. It's a proper worry, especially at his age, because it's a very, very formative part of your footballing career. The age he's at now, isn't it? This is where he's coming into his peak. So to have this injury record now, it is a big worry, and that we might not see him like you thought he would have been. I suppose from his point of view, it's about taking the time out to make sure he's fully fit and maybe adapting his game. He might have to change how he plays, which would be a shame if he's less physical, but it could be one of those for the sake of his career.
Yeah, I think he'd already moved, hadn't he, from being the sort of Roman focal point to penalty box poacher, hadn't he? And it feels like these injuries mean he's probably going to go even more towards being someone who plays in the penalty box, and that's it. And as much as he didn't really run the channels as much as he used to when he was playing really well under Ancelotti, he would still put himself about, wouldn't he, and throw himself into headers and be willing to take a big knock for the team. And you just wonder, and listen, obviously it's all speculative at this point, isn't it? Because we don't know when he could come back on Sunday and look absolutely boss, and we could all be all sat here going, well, here he is, he's back again. But I think the big shame for me is that we haven't seen him in an Everton shirt at Goodison since he scored that goal against Palace. And at the end of the most frustrating career, I imagine, of his career, so frustrating year of his career. He spoke about how he had issues with his physical fitness, with his mental health, not playing well, different managers. That kind of felt like a real lifeline for him at the end of it. And it's like, right, he's been the hero, he's kept us up. Next season, the momentum is going to be there. And I think he scored 1 goal in pre-season, looked pretty good, all in all. And then, that must be devastating to have that just sort of taken away like that. The week before, a couple of days before the first game of the season. And to not be able to capitalize on that, and to have lost that potential chance of momentum that he would have had. Imagine what the reception would have been for him first game of the season against Chelsea if he lined up that day. All the negativity and all the people doubting him and all that from the start of midway through last season, it would have been completely gone. It would have been a fresh start. Whereas now it's Evertonians are having this exact conversation that we're having in booze before the games, in the ground, and I'm wondering if he's ever going to come back the same player. So
he could easily have made the difference in that game.
Oh, of course, yeah,
easily. So it is a shame. It's very, very frustrating. But as you say, for him to take a knock like that again, this is where he's mentally got to get over those hurdles as well, because it's not just the physical stuff, is it? If you're a player and you're suddenly thinking, he's approaching what, 25 now, I guess he's getting on for, isn't he? He's thinking of getting all these injuries. It's going to take a toll on you, even when you're playing. As you say, he might not put himself about as much, which can take a lot away from his game. So yeah, a lot of uncertainty there. I think being brutal, we do need to go out in January, don't we, and get another striker in of a similar sort of stature, I think.
Yeah, would tend to agree. Just very quickly, you both sort of hinted you'll play McNeil on Sunday. Does that mean Anthony Gordon sits on the bench again?
I think so for me, yeah.
Mick, you dropped the mic, right?
I think I'd rather have Gordon and McNeil, but I wouldn't be fussed of either who started, to be honest. But I think McNeil, after last week, kind of deserves another go. And I think with the type of game it'll be on Sunday, I do think you need the type of wingers who are going to be grafting as much as can, and I don't think Gray is that really compared to Gordon and McNeil anyway.
Yeah, I think one thing with Gordon that spooked me was the thing with Patterson where he didn't pick up his man and then he had to fight him. I've got no problem with that, because that's what footballers do. If they make a mistake and they have a go at each other and then it's gone, that's fine. But I don't know if, for me, having Coleman in there, having a player who might have that lapse of concentration or might not be switched on enough to keep tracking back, I think that's what sort of sits in my head. But as Mick said, Gray not necessarily wanting to track back, so maybe McNeil and Gordon. But
I was just sort of thinking then, would there be any kind of temptation to, obviously we mentioned about the lack of height and soft centre, would you be any temptation to maybe put Decore in midfield, and I can't believe I'm going to say these blasphemous words, but maybe move a Wobie out to the wing and to cover Seamus, something like that, because you mentioned there that they are probably where they are the biggest threat is out wide, with Anthony, who's going to play off the right, and Sancho will likely play off the left-hand side. Do you say to Decore and Onana, you can both push on at various times. Do you say to Iwobi, play off the right and give a bit of cover to Seamus? Is that sort of a route they could go down?
It's not a bad shout.
I have no issue with that.
Yeah, I don't want to see Iwobi out wide, particularly because it takes so much away from his game. But yeah, as you say, he can do that position. He can give cover to the right back. So yeah, I'd have no issues with that.
Go full Big Sam, Mick.
I mean, if that's what Lampard wants to do, be my guest.
I just want to terror United, however way we can, just terror them. Just make it horrible for them on every single level. So whatever we need to do that, do it.
Yeah. I quite fancy us on Sunday. Anyway, you lads are the same mindset, both nodding your head.
Unfortunately, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
There we go. A lot of belief around the Blues at the moment, which is great to see. And why not when you've got the best defence in the league, Mick? It's just marvellous, isn't it? Absolutely marvellous. We will leave it there for now. Cheers to Les, cheers to Mick. That has been your weekly show here on the Blue Room. You want a bit more from us? As ever, we are over on Patreon on the Blue Room Extra. It's patreon.com/the Blue Room Extra. I hope you're building up to that game. Over the next few days, we'll have a weekend preview. Les will be doing a mailbag as well. So yeah, plenty going on over the next few days. Fingers crossed the lads can get the job done on Sunday night under the lights at Goodison Park. And we'll speak to you after that. Take care.